Hi, this is John Allen. Welcome to another exclusive video feature on Crux. Today, this video feature is brought to you by the good people at the Bush School of Business and the Catholic University of America, who are co-sponsoring, along with the Knapp Institute, an upcoming October 4th through 6th major conference, big Catholic happening in Washington, entitled the Good Prophet Conference, sort of devoted to the highly counterintuitive principle that Catholic social teaching and the world of business and profit and all of that evil capitalist maneuvering out there aren't necessarily blood enemies, that there is actually a potential synergy and common ground between these two different ways of looking at the human experience and human potential. We are joined today by one of the experts who will be a VIP and key personality at this conference, Dr. Brian Engelland of the Catholic University of America, who has a book out called Force for Good. And Brian, please hold that book up so people can see the cover. Tell us how people can find it.
Well, it's going to be available from Sophia Institute Press, so you can go to their website, or I'm sure that you can go to Amazon.com. They're going to have it as well.
Speaking of websites, CUA and the Bush School of Business have set up a special website for this conference. Predictably enough, it is the goodprophetconference.com. So you can find all the information you want and more about the happenings at this shindig there. So, Brian, let's start with this. You have written a book on this subject. You were taking part in this conference. I would say I've been covering the Catholic Church for, more than 20 years now, but particularly in the Pope Francis era. I think there is a view in the street that Catholic social teaching and free market capitalism are just square peg, round hole. They're just oil and water. They don't mix. Okay. Now, you are actually arguing that that's not true, that actually Catholic social teaching, if you take it seriously, is not merely a pathway to a virtuous life. It's also a successful business model, right? So unpack that counterintuitive notion for us a little bit.
Well, that is a really good way of putting it, because as we look at what's going on in the world today, we see lots of confusion about this whole notion of what profit is all about. And we know that profit is a necessary aspect of doing business. You got to be profitable if you want to survive. It's kind of like breathing for human beings. You got to breathe in order to survive. But humans do a lot more than just breathe every day. I mean, we have all sorts of things that we are called to do, and all by our Creator, and things that we want to achieve in this world. And businesses have the same obligations and same desires. Unfortunately, in the day-to-day struggle of meeting the numbers and doing things on a day-to-day basis, sometimes we get confused, and the urgent kind of overwhelms the long term. And yet, what businesses need to do is step back, and they need to build a culture of a culture that will protect themselves so that they can do the right thing in every situation. And my book is really all about business integrity. And the pitch that I'm going to make at the conference kind of unpacks that whole notion of what business integrity is all about. And you can define it. Some people have defined it as being honest, but business integrity goes much, much deeper and farther than being honest. It's really all about making sure that in every situation, every day, you do the right thing. The big problem in this world today in business is that we are gathering folks from all sorts of different walks of life and with different value structures and different backgrounds. And they miss sometimes trying to relate to one another is what is the right thing to do in this particular situation. So it's incumbent now on businesses to define what is the right thing, so that not only does the marketing department do the right thing, but the production department does the right thing. The finance department, everybody in the whole organization knows what the right thing to do is, and it does it on a daily basis. So my book talks about this whole notion of integrating Catholic social teaching into the business. Now, this is a great move if you're Catholic, and because lots of folks will say, well, wait a minute, I'm not Catholic. What do I care about this thing called Catholic social teaching? Well, these are really good, effective rules of human interaction. And we all care about interacting effectively with others. And so when we look at the 4 key principles of Catholic social doctrine, the idea of human dignity, which is the people first principle, the idea of solidarity, which is all about teamwork, the idea of subsidiarity, which is all about personal responsibility, and then common good, which is all about stewardship. When we look at those 4 issues, I mean, not issues, but principles, we can really do a fabulous job of integrating those in business, and we can find assent and enthusiasm by everyone involved in the organization. We don't need to call them Catholic social principles or Catholic social teaching, but what we can do is we can import those concepts into our business, apply them, get everybody on the same page, and then we're going to have a business that can truly be a force for good.
Yeah, I mean, because those 4 principles, human dignity, solidarity, subsidiarity, and the common good, I mean, sure, they are pillars of Catholic social teaching, but you don't have to be Catholic to embrace them, do you? I mean, in fact, lots of people who don't come from Catholic backgrounds actually do embrace those principles. And so that's one of the reasons that, the Catholic social teaching has always been touted as a natural bridge between the church and the rest of the world, because in a sense, we're speaking the world's language, aren't we?
Absolutely. And in this conference that we have coming up next week involves some business leaders that have done some very interesting things in the way that they run their business. For instance, we have Charles Koch on the panel. Charles has written several books about market-based management. That's his list of principles that he has imbued in his organization. And it's surprising how many of those are Catholic social doctrine principles that he has imported. He doesn't call them Catholic, but in fact, that's what they are. Now, not everything.
So listen, Brian, let me try to put you on the spot a little bit as the guy who has literally written the book on this subject. Can you point to an example of a company that you think is a really good role model of both doing the right thing, the virtuous thing, as Catholic social teaching would understand it, and also being a success in the marketplace?
Absolutely. I can point to quite a few folks that I've talked about in my book, and these are all businesses that are successful. Now, the reason that they are successful is that they are able to build trust in the workforce that they employ, in the consumers that they sell products to. They do things the right way. They engender trust and therefore loyalty. And what happens is that trust and loyalty builds up with repeat business and long-term success. Now, I hesitate because I've done this in the past in my classes. I'll tell my students, well, look at so-and-so company. Boy, they do things right. And then the next thing you do is another day or another year, you read about the fact that they fell off the wagon and they...
All right. Yeah.
So I hesitate to hold up any one firm and say, do what they do. What I like to do, however, is look at firms and I can say, look at this aspect of what they do. This works and it's worth emulating. But look out for your own business, and apply it to your own business so that and I think that's the whole, my hope for the book is to get folks to not only build the principles, but really make them an active part of their business.
Well, but the point, I mean, the reason I was asking you for an example, we don't have to get into specifics, but I guess I'm just looking for you to assure people that this isn't just a pipe dream. that if you take principles of Catholic social teaching seriously and try to integrate them sort of top to bottom into your business practice, and you do it right, that's not just a prescription for virtue, it's also a prescription for success in the marketplace, right?
Exactly. Not only success in the marketplace, but it's the kind of thing that results in broadened success all the way in everything that you do. And I'll tell you, you sleep a lot better at night as well. At the end of the day,
it's hard to put a price tag on that, isn't it? Yeah.
Business, in fact.
So listen, Brian, tell us a little bit about this conference. Like, where did the idea for this conference come from? What are the objectives, and what are you hoping is going to come out of it?
Sure. So we have academics, but we have business practitioners, and we have church leaders that are coming together. And what we're trying to do is look at how Catholic social doctrine can be applied effectively to business. The title of the conference, Good Prophet, comes from Charles Koch's most recent book, which is called Good Prophet. He talks about, the things that have made the Koch industries fairly successful. And what we're trying to do in the conference is to kind of analyze some of those things to help attendees of the conference understand which of those principles relate to the Catholic social doctrine and which of those do not relate. And then what we're going to do is we're going to try to look at, well, where there's gaps. What does this mean? What is the business of the future really going to look like if it includes all of the principles that Catholic social doctrine imbues and talks?
So, Brian, you're kind of right there at the intersection of two different worlds that often, to be completely honest, are not on great speaking terms with each other, right? There's the kind of Catholic ecclesiastical world, which has its own integrity and its own logic and its own, vocabulary and its own conversations and so on. And then there's the business world, which has, a very different culture and a very different psychology and a very different set of preoccupations. And, part of the problem, as you well know far better than I do, is that when church leaders speak on business issues, to be quite honest, they often don't know what they're talking about, at least not from the inside. And similarly, when business leaders might presume to pronounce on religious questions, it's the same kind of thing in reverse. But as you've been patrolling this intersection for some time now, what I'm curious about is how much receptivity do you find in terms of input from the church on the business side? I mean, when you go to business guys and you say, hey, I think the Catholic Church might actually have some really interesting stuff that you would find helpful. I mean, do you find a priori hostility? Do you find people just laugh you out of the room? Or have you been surprised how much openness there actually is to that kind of thing?
So when you say, hey, I'm going to bring you things that the church is talking about doing, I think you do see a lot of eyes rolling, and you say, come on, give me something practical. Don't give me something theological. I need to accomplish this now. Tell me how to do that. And so it's I think, but when you talk about the specific principles of the four principles of Catholic social doctrine, the ones that we've talked about, and we say, how do those get implemented into an organization? Suddenly you get people to eyes light up and say, oh, people first? Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can see how this can work to build trust and loyalty in the organization. And talk about personal responsibility. Oh, I get it. And then you talk about how solidarity and subsidiarity work together, how personal responsibility and teamwork work together. And suddenly they say, okay, how do I implement that? What do I need to do to make that happen on a day-to-day basis? And we look at about those things, and then you get their attention. So I think there are wonderful truths that the popes and the saints have talked about with respect to human interaction, what we need to do to make things work effectively between one another. And those truths are very applicable to business today.
Okay, so let me, I'm a journalist, right? So let me try to put this in a soundbite, right? Are you saying that when it comes to reaching the business community, The evangelical strategy here is start with the 10-minute manager and then explain how it's rooted in the gospel. Is that what you're saying?
That's probably the right way to do it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, listen, Brian, I promise you, at Crux, we are going to be following this October 4th through 6th Good Prophet Conference, brought to everyone by the Bush School of Business and the Catholic University of America. We will be following that very closely. I hope when the whole thing is over and the dust has settled a little bit, maybe we can hook up with you again and on the other side of it, you can talk about what you think the big takeaways were. Would that be okay?
That'd be great, John. I appreciate that opportunity. Very good.
Great. Okay. Well, as we would say here in Rome, in bocca al lupo for the conference. That's basically the Italian way of saying good luck. And you can find regular updates about the conference on the Crux site. And again, the actual conference site is goodprofitconference.com. Each one of those words is capitalized. So goodprofitconference.com. That will take you directly to the conference site. You can find the lineup, speakers, big events, and so on. This is a pretty rare event, folks. I mean, it is rare that a major Catholic American university sits down with some of the big corporate movers and shakers in the business world to try to talk about how the church and business can kind of join forces to try to build a better world. So you're going to want to have your eyes on it. Keep following us here on Crux. We will have other video features related to this conference. Very grateful to Dr. Brian Engelland for joining us today. And until you and I see one other again, have a great day.